All right, today we're talking about booking mini sessions with the Dubsado scheduler. So let me just quickly cover first what a mini session is. If you're not a photographer, you might not be familiar with this. So a mini session is usually like a short photo shoot that photographers will do with their clients, and they like to kind of pick a day or a couple of days at just one location and just do a bunch of shoots back to back. So instead of going to the clients are coming to you, and you are just handling, going through these shoots kind of all back to back. So it's a great thing that often happens around holidays. I'm not sure how possible it is right now with our current situation, but even if you're not a photographer, this is still going to be a great session for you to learn how a lot of the pieces of Dubsado fit together. We're going to be combining, the scheduler, lead capture, workflow, invoicing, all of these different things. So if you've been a little lost on how the pieces come together, this webinar is hopefully going to clear a lot of that up. So our goal for today is to create a scheduler template that can be shared publicly or embedded on your website to allow clients to book short photography sessions. So the booking process is going to be entirely automated, which is really awesome. And we're even going to talk a little bit about implementing a workflow with this, some ways you can kind of spice things up with your automation. I will also note, because I did get some questions about it last time, I'm showing you the simplest way to set up for mini sessions in Dubsado. So we're not using a proposal. There's not going to be a package option, package selection option. There's no payment schedule. We're taking payment in full up front. Mini sessions do tend to have a lower price point because they're a bit shorter. So that is how we're going over this today. I do have another webinar that you could go back and see. I left a link to it in the handout that goes over more extensively using a proposal with a scheduler. That changes quite a bit. So we're keeping it simple today, and this is going to be the easiest way to set up mini sessions. So as usual, some of these webinars, they're not going to be totally beginner webinars. We have been having a great scheduler workshop series so far. So hopefully if you've been following along, you're kind of ready for this next step. But it is going to help to be familiar with lead captures, how smart fields and smart field links work, especially when setting up canned emails, basic scheduler template setup, and creating workflows. So I'm not going to be going, super in depth on, the basics of these things. We're more just tying everything together. I have sort of a supply list here of things that you'll need to recreate this on your own. So we're actually going to be creating a lot of these components in real time on the webinar. But first of all, we'll need a scheduler template for the mini session event. We're going to go through and create that together. You're going to need a confirmation canned email and a reminder canned email. So I'm going to show you some tips with those. We're going to need a lead capture that can be connected to the scheduler because we're going to be, having to bring new folks into the system as they book. We're going to need a contract template. Technically, this is optional. I'm showing you how to incorporate a contract in this. So technically, it's optional, but as good business owners, we should always be using a contract. So we're going to go over that, and then a canned email to send the contract out to the client. And the reason we're going to need that separate canned email, if you haven't found out already, our scheduler, even though we can attach a lead capture form, unfortunately, we are not able to also attach a contract. It has to be sent separately. So I'm going to show you how to handle that in the system. Okay, and now we're just going to start going through our step-by-step instructions. We're going to walk through everything together. So number one, I do recommend that you write out the details of the mini session event. So just get all of your details straight and written out next to you. It will be really helpful as you go through to create these templates to have everything planned out ahead of time. So the time, the location, pricing, etc., anything you need clients to know that you might want to include in an email. It's just good to help keep those details consistent as you set up all of these templates. Okay, and so the next bit here, we are going to be creating a scheduler template. So let's jump over to Dubsado. There is going to be a little bit of back and forth where we're going to do a little bit of setup on the scheduler template, and we're going to come back and connect some things to it later. But let's just get the kind of foundations set first. So we're here under templates and scheduler, and I'm going to click add template to start a new scheduler template. So we'll name it mini sessions. Now, of course, you might offer many different kinds of mini sessions, like fall mini sessions, Christmas mini sessions, whatever you're doing with them, you can give it that appropriate name, because you're probably going to make a different scheduler template the next time that you do these sessions, since the details will be different. Set the appointment duration. So this is going to be how long those sessions will last. I'm just going to put 15 minutes here. When can this appointment be scheduled? So for mini sessions, this is usually taking place over usually the course of one day. I have heard of some folks doing a couple of days, but usually it's just going to be kind of for a day. So for this, I'm actually going to choose a fixed date range. And what this allows me to do is basically set a specific date when appointments will be available. I've decided that my mini sessions are going to be on July 24th. So I'm going to pick the start as the 24th and also the end as the 24th. So you might see that right now on our preview calendar here, the date has disappeared. It's because we are not looking at that just yet. Let's see. We just might have, there we go. So if it's not showing up for you, just try resetting the start and the end date, and you should see that pop up in the preview there. So now we have to decide kind of what time frame we're offering the appointments in on that date. So to do that, I'm going to click in to the 24th, and we have to set our available slots. I'm going to do sort of a morning block and an afternoon block, so I have time in the middle to take a break. So because our current default time slot is 9 to 5, I'm going to click the X here to get rid of it. If I try to add an overlapping slot, Dubsado is not going to let me do that. So we have to clear it out first. And let's say I'm going to start these sessions at 9, and we will end the morning session at noon. So I'll click add times to add that slot, and then I can go back in and add some more times. So I'll pick back up again at 12:30, and let's say we'll wrap up at 4 p.m. and I'll click add times. So now we have 2 blocks where appointments will be available on that date. So they'll be available for 15 minutes during those kind of big sections. And I'm just going to apply this to only July 24th. Could also do all Fridays, but we're just looking at the 24th. So I will select that option. We can see that updated there. At the bottom of the basic tab, we have some more here. So once booked, show me as. We do want this to be busy because we don't want those slots to be double booked. Once someone books a slot, we want that to be unavailable for additional booking. For the location, you can decide what to put here. So there is a smart field that you can add into your confirmation and reminder emails that will show the location. So if you have a particular address where this is taking place, you could pop that in. If you're not comfortable sharing the location up front, since this will be visible when clients go to book the appointment, you could also just write in here like location will be sent after confirmation email or something like that. And then you could just type in the location into your confirmation and reminder emails instead of using that smart field. So if you don't want to show the location up front, you could use that instead, or just leave this entirely blank, up to you. Okay, then we have our email at the bottom. We actually won't be needing this. For the mini sessions, we're sharing this publicly, which means that we're either embedding this scheduler on a website or we're sharing it via the direct link. So clients are just going to it. So we are going to create a brand new project for everyone who books one of these sessions. This email is only used when we're sending the scheduler out through a project, so it will not be used. You can leave it as is. And then at the bottom, I will click Save, and we have the beginnings of our scheduler template here. In the Advanced tab, we can make a couple more adjustments at the moment. First of all, some of these advanced appointment settings, they will help you control the bookings for this. So for prevention, if you want to prevent bookings less than a certain amount of time in advance, this is great because you don't want to think your schedule is set for the next day and then somebody decides to book like an hour before you're starting. That would not be good. So let's just say we'll prevent bookings less than 48 hours in advance. So 2 days before the 24th, those appointments will no longer be available to book. You can also do a buffer time if you want. So right now we have 15-minute appointment duration. So the appointments will be 15 minutes long. So you can decide sort of between buffer time and increments here. I think because these are appointments that are just going back to back, you're expecting them to fill up, I would probably go with just choosing the increments. That makes sense. So if you want to have sort of like 10 minutes between each appointment to kind of reset up with the next group, we could maybe say, let's make it 5 minutes. Let's say it's 5 minutes between groups here. This is like, I didn't quite do the math on this beforehand, so it might look a little strange, but let's say we're showing the time slots in increments of 20 minutes. So that means appointments could start at 9 a.m., 9:20, 9:40, 10 a.m., etc. The client just sees that the appointment is 15 minutes long, so it's kind of giving you like a 5-minute buffer time between each appointment. Okay, and then the appointment details. This you probably will not need to use unless you're trying to set a maximum on the number of appointments to be booked that is not kind of already by default happening because of the amount of time that you set out to do the sessions and the increments that you're doing them in. So you're probably not going to need to adjust these maximums here, but for instance, if you wanted to only do like 5 sessions that day, you could put this to a maximum of 5. Otherwise, we'll just leave it blank, and appointments can be booked all throughout that available time period. Okay, so we're gonna save what we have so far, and we're gonna come back to this later. Let's take a look at our next step. So the next step is to write the canned emails. And so we need a few different canned emails for this setup. We need a confirmation email, a reminder email, and then eventually we'll also need an email to send out the contract. So in Dubsado, let's go under templates and canned emails. I'm just gonna filter. This is pretty cool. If you didn't know this was here, you can actually click where it says filter emails and type in. So if I've named all of my canned emails with mini sessions in the title, this makes it really easy for me to find them. So let's see, we have mini sessions, confirmation. So I'm gonna click on that. All you wanna do in the confirmation email is take advantage of some of the smart fields for the appointment. So because this email is being sent by the scheduler, we're connecting it to the scheduler template, we can use under smart field and appointment, any of these smart fields here to fill in the appropriate details about the appointment. So you can see that I have some here for the appointment title, brand name, appointment start, date and time, and we put in the where with the appointment location smart field. Again, that's optional. We also have under smart field and link right now, it says add to calendar link. So this is a way to add a text hyperlink to a confirmation or reminder email that the client can click on, and it will help them add this calendar event to their calendar if they've not done so already. Now, let's talk about the contract piece of this because you'll see it mentioned right here. So we are going to use a workflow to send the contract out to the client after they've booked, and we are going to ask them to sign that. So because it's not going in this same email, or just letting the client know to keep an eye out for that. You'll see I reference that in the subject as well. So this is a good tip to kind of keep your process in mind and help your client know what's coming up next with what you write into these emails. So there's a confirmation email. The reminder email is really similar. You can do a few different reminders if you want. I just kept this very simple. If you want to put instructions into this one on how they should get ready for the session, what they need to bring to the session, this is a great place to do that. So set up that reminder email as well. And we have an email to send the contract. So in this email, just basically, please sign this ahead of time. And the key piece of this is that we have a contract link smart field. So this is inserted by going to smart field, link, and contract link. So this is where Dubsado will display the button for the client to click on to sign their contract. Okay, and you may have noticed I have a couple other emails set up for the mini sessions, and we will come back to those later for our kind of advanced version of this setup. But for now, let's see what is next. So we've done our 3 emails. Next, we're going to build the contract template and prepare the email, obviously, if you have not done so already. Something to note about the contract in this case. When a client books an appointment, it's setting an appointment date. So we're not actually setting a project date, even though we are going to be making a new project with our lead capture form. There's no project date being set, just an appointment date is being set. Inside of a contract, you can only use smart fields for a project date. You cannot use the appointment smart fields inside of a contract. The reason for this is that the contract is not being sent by the scheduler. We're sending it separately. So unlike our confirmation and reminder emails, we cannot use the appointment smart fields in the contract. What does this ultimately mean? You cannot automatically display, using a smart field, the date and time of the appointment. It's just not going to be possible in the contract in this case. So if you didn't want to automate this, you could manually adjust the contract for every single person before you send it out to put their exact date and time inside. But my recommendation to keep everything automated is, instead of using a smart field for the project date, since it just won't be set automatically, actually type in the date of the mini session. So by typing this into our template, we don't have to rely on a smart field. It does, however, limit us to just using this contract template just for these mini sessions. So if you want to reuse it later, you're just going to have to update it the next time you do mini sessions, or make a copy or something like that. So just know it's not going to update automatically. You've typed it in. So we have that session date typed in there. Okay, so that's really the only thing with the contract. You can put in here whatever you need. This is just kind of a sample. All right, so our next step, number 5, is to build a lead capture form. So one of the things that we are doing with these mini sessions is we're going to require payment, and I'll show you where to do that on the scheduler template. But because we're sharing the scheduler publicly and we're requiring payment, it is really important that we include a lead capture form with our scheduler. This is so that as each client books their session, we're also creating a project for that client and that session. And the reason this is very important is there's also going to be an invoice created for the session fee. If we don't have a lead capture, then the invoice created has no project to be tied to. If the invoice has no project, it's not going to show any of the client's contact information, which is a real bummer. And you're not going to be able to sort of connect invoice back to a project at a later time. It's not going to happen. So we need to make sure that everything's being connected at the beginning, which is why we'll use our lead capture form. So at a minimum, you need first name, last name, email, each of these fields should be required and separate. So you should know this from creating lead capture forms and mapped to the client, the appropriate client information. Beyond that, you can add in any other questions that you would like some answers to as the client is booking. So if you want a phone number for them, make sure to ask for that here. If you want to know some information, let's say they're family sessions, as they often are, go ahead and ask for some additional details there. So you can put whatever you want on this lead capture form. This is also something we're going to be coming back to connect our workflow. In fact, let me disconnect the one I had there so we can come back and connect it later. We're going to be connecting a default workflow here in the settings tab to essentially automate the sending of our contract out to the clients after they go through the scheduler process. So that will be ready for us to connect. Just a couple of nice organizational details to keep you sane here. So we're setting a default project status. So I have a lead project status for new inquiries. I'm just using that here. So all new bookings will go into that status. And then we have a lead title as well. So you can kind of set up a naming convention for all of the projects that are being created. So I've just done mini session, and I can use the client smart fields to pull in the last name and the family. So it'll say mini session, Smith family, for example. Really nice to keep that organized. Okay, so we have our emails, we have our lead capture form, we have our contract, we have our scheduler. Now we're going to set up the workflow to send out the contract. So here is where we start combining some of these pieces together. So under templates and workflow, I have a couple examples here we're going to come back to, but for now, I'm just going to build this one from scratch. So we're going to click Add Workflow in the top right corner there, and I'm just going to call this Mini Sessions. A lot of people ask me this because I like to do it for webinars. I enjoy adding emoji to the beginning of my template names to kind of draw attention to them. So it's nothing special. I'm literally just putting in an emoji into the title, and it makes it kind of fun. Okay, so for our mini session workflow, we pretty much, in this scenario, just need one action. So I'm going to add an action, and we're going to choose the send contract action because that is what we are doing. We are sending the contract. Let me skip the when for a moment. Send contract options. We're going to send this via email. In the contract template to send, we're going to choose our template that we've created. So now it starts to really make sense. So I want all those templates set up first so you can just select them and tie them together. In our email to send, same thing. You can search for it. We have our send contract email already ready to go, and this is almost finished already. Let's talk about the when. So our order that the clients will see, so they'll start on the scheduler, pick the date and time of their session. Then the scheduler is going to take them over to the lead capture form. They're going to fill out the lead capture form with their details and hit submit. At that moment, when the client hits submit on the lead capture form, Dubsado creates a new project for them. They haven't paid for the session yet, but Dubsado creates a new project because that lead capture form was submitted. So it's ready to receive the invoice that is about to be created next. Because of this, we need to make sure in our workflow that we're not sending the contract too early. It does happen sometimes that someone will maybe change their mind midway through booking the appointment, or they'll forget what they've been doing and go run off after something else, and they might not complete their booking and complete their payment. So it is important that we don't send this contract until after the invoice has been paid in full. So for our when, we're going to use 0 days, so it's immediate. We're just going to use after invoice paid in full. And I'll apply this. The reason we're using this as the trigger is the workflow will be applied when the lead capture is submitted. So the workflow is also being applied before payment is received necessarily. So By doing this, the workflow will be on the project, but this action will not run until they pay this invoice. Okay, so, and this works in this situation because the project is being created by this lead capture with the scheduler. We're going to end up with a primary invoice. If you've ever had trouble with multiple invoices and workflows, in this scenario, it does work to the scheduler will essentially create the primary invoice that the workflow is watching out for. So this makes it so that we don't need to worry when that workflow is applied. Now that we have our workflow and we've followed through those steps, and I'll also mention you can add additional actions to your workflow, and I'll show you some, kind of neat methods for that in a little bit. But just remember, again, workflow starting as soon as the client completes lead capture before they've paid, and also you will not be able to use project date or appointment triggers. This is one of the biggest things I see happen in workflows starting from embedded lead capture forms, or embedded schedulers with lead capture forms. You cannot use the after appointment is scheduled trigger. It won't work. If I choose this, you'll notice it's asking me for a scheduler or group to watch, and then it says you've not added an appointment scheduler to this workflow. And I haven't. The scheduler is being embedded on a website. It's not being sent through the workflow, so I cannot use this trigger. So that's why we're using after invoice paid in full instead. Okay, so let's go back to our lead capture form, the mini session booking, and in the settings, we will attach this as the default workflow. There we go. I'll click save. So now our lead capture is set up. Now we can go back to the scheduler and tie these pieces together. So we'll go in the advanced tab, and under confirmation email, go ahead and choose the confirmation email that you set up. Under additional form, select the mini session lead capture. Great. Let's make sure we are also requiring our booking fee. So that is under the invoice setting under additional options. I'll click the toggle here to turn that on. I'll click new line item so that we can put this in. So unfortunately, you can't choose from your packages as you set this up. Maybe in the future we'll allow that, but for right now, you have to make this line item from scratch. That's why I didn't have you set up a package template. And again, we're just collecting payment in full for the session. This is gonna be the simplest way to go about this. So I'm gonna call it session fee. And we will put in a price. And of course, if you're categorizing this or need to add tax, you can do so too. I'm just gonna add that in as is. And then under notification, this is where we can have our reminder go out. So I'll turn that on, and then for duration, I'll put 24 hours. That means 24 hours prior to the appointment. Under email, I will choose, there we go, 24-hour reminder. Okay, and I'll click add. So clicking add is going to add this in. We also have the option of doing a monthly view. I love turning this on because it gives clients some more kind of context of where the date is. The weekly view is great for kind of immediate booking, but it's nice to have that monthly view so that clients can really see what it looks like on the full month calendar. So I will save that. Let's see if we missed any steps here. I don't think that we did. Nope, so we've got our confirmation email set, the lead capture set, we put our invoice on, and we set up our reminders. So now we want to test it out and then finally embed the scheduler on your site once you're happy with everything. So I have a little tip for testing this out for you. So you can create a discount code for 100% off and then enable this in the scheduler template. So if you notice right here, allow clients to apply discounts, I can say yes, And then I have already set up a discount code under packages for 100% off. So it makes it free. This just lets you essentially go through the booking process to test it. And you'll have to put in a coupon code that you set it up with. It just lets you test it without having to pull your credit card out and pay yourself for it. So this is the best way to do that. Let me save that. And let me also go double check my discount code for the free. Make it free is my code. So if you're gonna do this, you do have to set a code for your discount there. But if you go through the handout, I have links to the help articles that go through how to do this. All right, let's go back to the scheduler. Testing is always really important. You wanna make sure everything is looking as you want it to. So, right, under mini sessions, let's go to that little link icon. This is where we'll find the embed code and the direct link. So we're all good to use these because we have our lead capture form connected. I'm gonna use the direct link, and I'll just copy that and go over here. Right, so this is what our scheduler looks like. We have the 24th pulling up right here with the availability. You can see how setting the increments to 20 minutes, we're showing appointment time starting every 20 minutes, but our duration is still 15. So I'll go ahead and click 9 a.m. and I'll do submit and next. This is exactly what the client would be doing. And I will fill out the lead capture. If you are familiar with testing things in Dubsado, you'll know that it's often important to use a incognito window to test out forms. And with the scheduler and the lead capture, we actually don't need that. But for the contract, we will need to open that in an incognito window. Lead capture is filled out. I'll click submit and next. That takes us onto the invoice. So this is great because you are getting to experience the kind of real-time way a client would be going through this, which is nice. Let me jump back to Dubsado really quick. We just submitted the lead capture form and we have our invoice showing to the client. But back in Dubsado, let's see our project. So we have the project created. This is just created by us. You can see the unpaid invoice for $120. If I click on this and go to the workflows tab, you'll notice that the workflow here is active. It's waiting for the invoice to be paid in full. If we go under invoices, we can see our invoice is right here. So, and it should be, yes, the primary invoice. So all is set up fine. Normally clients will go right through at this point and do their payment. We'll do our make it free just so that we can get the appointment booked. But that discount applied since it's 100%, just lets me click submit and finish. Now the appointment is booked. So before we did not have an appointment, now we do. They have to go through all 3 steps at the same time to book this appointment. So if someone bails out partway through and they don't finish booking, it would be a good thing to go into their project. Maybe you can send them an email and say, hey, I saw you were interested, but you didn't finish your booking. When you do that, send them a link back to the start. So send them a link to the page where you have this embedded on your website, or send them back to that direct link. Do not say, hey, here's your invoice, please pay it. Because if they just pay the invoice, it's not going to make the appointment at this time. So if they kind of leave this flow and they don't pay the invoice, and then later they go back to the invoice somehow and pay it, they would only do that if you somehow provided them the link to the invoice on purpose. So, they shouldn't be doing that. But if you were just to send them this invoice and say, here you go, you forgot to, pay, once they do that, this session is not actually booked. They won't get a confirmation, they won't get any reminders, and the slot will be available for someone else to book as well. So what you want to do if someone bails out and doesn't complete the booking is maybe just send them an email back to that first link, use this drop down here to archive the project, If it's a lead project, at this time we're going to delete the invoices there when you archive a project that has a lead status. So we're going to take care of deleting the invoice for you so you don't have that as an open balance. That happens automatically. And then, the project is just archived. And if they want to book, they'll follow that link you sent them and start the process over again and have a more accurate view of which appointments are available. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. In terms of testing out the workflow, if you do want to go through and see the workflow action happen after the invoice is paid in full, you can come to the invoice here, click the X next to free to take the discount away, and then you can click apply payment and do I call it a test, so that you know to go back and delete this one later from your transactions list, and just put in a method and put in the full amount. It's going to take a little longer for the workflow to register this test payment. I'm not sure why that is. It just takes a little bit longer, so you're not going to see it happen right away. Just be patient, and you should, see this contract email come to you shortly. If it's a real client and they've made an actual payment, it will run much, much, much faster. So don't worry about that. But we would then expect this to run through. And you can also see from the emails tab, we can see the confirmation email that was already sent out. This is great. Just a way to review what's going out, make sure you're happy with all of the content here. And that'll be very helpful. And of course, under the appointments tab, you will see this as a confirmed appointment. If you go to your calendar, left there, you'll see the confirmed appointments here as well. And in your calendar settings, if you have set this up to, export events onto your calendars, those events will go there. Here's a quick tip for you, because I've seen this come up a few times. A lot of times what will happen is you'll decide to do mini sessions on a day, and then you will put an event on your external calendar, so on your Google Calendar that you have connected to Dubsado. So you put an event blocking off that time to know that you have mini sessions. And then when you send out the scheduler, you have no availability showing. What's happening, here we go, what's happening is the Dubsado scheduler sees that you blocked off a whole day for an event, and it's just blocking off those times. So if you have an event on your calendar telling you that you're doing mini sessions that day, make sure to set it to available in your external calendar. If you have that choice between free or busy, make sure it's set to available so that Dubsado is not blocking off that time. If you have other schedulers in Dubsado where other appointments can be booked, to make this work, you may have to go into those schedulers and adjust the date specifically on that mini session date to, take out the slots and apply it only to that day. So this is one instance where you might just have to adjust some of your other scheduler templates to make sure nobody is double booking you on that date, since you have to leave it free for the scheduler to be able to put those appointments on. So hopefully that helps if you have ever run into that issue before. Okay, so that is the testing of our sort of basic setup of the Dubsado scheduler. So that's kind of the simplest way to set this up. I have some fun kind of next level things you can add to this process. So number one, we can actually send the contract in the confirmation email. I know I kind of held out on you here a little bit, but we can actually do this. A couple of things make it possible, mainly that there's only ever one contract on a project. So we can put that contract link in that contract link smart field in any email that Dubsado is sending out through a project, just as long as the contract exists on the project ahead of time. So what we can do is in a workflow, let me pull up the advanced version of the workflow. We still have this action right here, send contract at the start, but you'll notice I chose a different trigger. I'm using after all previous actions complete. I'm not using after invoice paid in full. What this does is it'll happen immediately when the client books the appointment. we're sending the contract, but we're not sending it in an email. We're just applying it to the client portal. This doesn't mean the client has to go into the portal to access the contract, just means that it's going to be available for them to view when we send them the link. So by doing this, we're getting that contract into the project as soon as they submit the lead capture. They still have to go through the invoice and make that payment. And this happens really instantaneously with the after all previous actions complete trigger. So with this in mind, in a canned email, and I have a different version here, confirmation with contract link, I've gone ahead and just put the contract link smart field into the confirmation email of the scheduler, and still letting them know they have to sign the contract at this point. So it still has to go in an email, but we're essentially just cutting one email out of the process. And I know you guys always love to kind of simplify the emails that you're sending. So this helps a lot with that. And all we have to do is go into the scheduler, advanced area here, and just, not the form, the confirmation email, set that as the confirmation with contract link. So just change out that confirmation email, and you'll be ready on that front. In the lead capture form, also make sure if you kind of changed the workflow, if you use a different workflow, you'll have to swap that here. In both of these cases, I don't want to get too far into it, but if you just edited the existing templates that you had, you would not need to come back in and reselect the confirmation or the workflow. It'll just be updated the next time that you use it. But we've swapped it out. So that's one cool thing you can do, is to send that contract actually in the confirmation email. Another recommendation I have for you is to really make use of project statuses and tags. So it's going to help you, kind of keep everything in order here. So if I go, let me save this, to my projects page, you'll see I have some statuses across the top. So I've set up my lead capture to put all of the new bookings under new inquiries. And I did that because I want to be able to weed out mini session bookings that came in who didn't pay and who didn't sign their contract. So by putting them in the new inquiries status, this gives us an opportunity to change that status after some things happen, so we can keep an eye on what's going on. So I also have a paid status and a contract signed status under jobs. It's up to you if you consider it to be a job once it's paid, or you want the contract to be signed as well. Maybe these statuses go under leads. That distinction is up to you. Lead to job, it's usually, that's kind of entirely up to you where they go in the order, but it's nice to have those statuses to kind of track this. And what allows us to track it is in the workflow, we change the project status. So I have one status change here that's immediately after invoice paid in full. I'm changing it to paid. This means that if someone fills out the lead capture, doesn't pay the invoice right there with the scheduler, it's not going to move over to paid. Now you know that you can go into that new inquiries status on your projects page and look through for people who signed up like a day ago or so, and send out those emails and archive them so that they have a new opportunity to book. But if they went to the paid status, that they're pretty much safe. And that's, again, triggering after invoice paid in full. We also have a change project status immediately after contract signed by client. And we're changing it to the contract signed status. So this lets you watch the paid status. You can see, we have like 2 or 3 clients stuck here that didn't sign their contract. Let me manually email them and give them a nudge to do so. We don't really have a simple way of doing a contract reminder without setting up an expiration date. So you can kind of look into ways of doing that, but just send them a quick email would be a good way to take care of it. So those project statuses really help you stay on top of things. I also said tags. So we can add an action to this workflow to add tag to the project. This is great if you do a lot of mini sessions and you want to keep track of who, which projects were from which mini session, you can essentially create a new tag for every mini session you do. And then you can filter your projects by that tag later on, which is pretty neat. And by having the workflow apply this tag for us. Oops, I forgot to save it. Good job. Click add tag if you're creating a new one, and make sure it's saved there before you click apply. So you can have that tag added by the workflow so that you don't have to do it manually, which is really nice. Statuses and tags will help you keep things organized. Finally, last but not least, a follow-up workflow. So maybe you are thinking, okay, this is really nice that I can automate sending the contract out, but I want some more things to happen, and you can do that. So the biggest thing with a follow-up workflow is to do this in phases. So we do actually want to break up between the two workflows, a booking phase and the follow-up phase. The reason for this is, just like in the contract, we cannot use those project date or appointment date triggers. It has to be fixed dates to get it around this event date. So, and again, the fixed dates work here because everyone is doing the sessions on the same day. That's what's unique about these mini sessions that makes this work very well. You can't do this with regular photography sessions that are just booked at any time throughout the year because the date is always going to be different. In this situation, everyone is doing their session on July 24th. So I can use that as a fixed date in my workflow and take advantage of that. So you will notice here that in my advanced version of the workflow, the final action is start a workflow, mini session follow-up, immediately after all previous actions complete. If you look at the example I gave you in the handout, I added some things in this time, but this says immediately after invoice paid in full. That also works. The reason I did after all previous actions in this case is I want the project status change to happen after the invoice is paid. I want the project status change to happen after the contract is signed, so I know that both the invoice is paid and the contract is signed before the client gets to the follow-up sequence. Okay, so we're just preventing this workflow from being applied to the project unless both of these things have happened. We often do this with hold actions until, but we're already changing the project statuses, so having this action at the bottom works out very nicely. This will not happen until both of these other events have happened as well. Okay, so let's take a look at that follow-up workflow. And this is, kind of up to you. My example here is to send an email out, a thank you email, the day after the sessions. So if we look at this, instead of the relative option, where you kind of set the buffer and all of that, I've chosen the fixed date option. So we're actually selecting a specific date and time on the calendar to send this out. Let me reset that. Here we go. To July, we want this to be the next day, July 25th. So the next day at 11, we want to send everyone who booked a session a thank you note, which is really nice. So again, that's a canned email you could set up. I decided I wanted to create some to-dos for myself to process the photos. Again, all the timing on this is customizable, up to you. I'm just saying basically after the thank you email goes out, that I have a to-do added in Dubsado to do this, to process the photos. After I check that to-do off, I have another to-do that will be, created, and that is to paste the gallery link into the email for the client. And what I've done is I have an email here that's preloaded for mini sessions, deliver the gallery. And I have a button I'm actually using. If you go under formatting options and then go to insert link or button, you can do this in an email. You choose button, it'll let you make your own Dubsado button, but with a custom link, which is pretty fun. So if I click on this and choose edit link, you'll see that I don't have a URL here. So I've just kind of made a placeholder. We can't really use a smart field. I've seen some people work out a way to do it with one, but you don't need to. Just have this placeholder and with the text, and I know I'm going to paste the specific link for this specific client in here later. And the way we do that is if we go, let me just go to a project and quickly apply this workflow to show you. So this workflow would automatically be applied, after those criteria that we talked about before. But let's say we get all the way down to this one at the bottom. When you have the gallery link, you can click edit on this email, click on the button, and then edit link. Just paste in that client's specific gallery link. And we're just changing it for this client, so it's their copy of the email. Click update, and they'll have their gallery link ready to go. We'll click apply to save the changes, and then you'll be able to check off that to-do that you did, and then click approve. So I also put an approval on here with the option to require approval before completing the action. I just wanted a double kind of fail safe that I absolutely pasted that link in the email, because just in case I check off the to-do a little too early or something, I also know I have to click approve. So I have a little bit more confidence that that is not going out without my customization. So those are just some really cool ways that you can kind of add to this booking sequence. And you can repeat this for other mini sessions in the future. You just need to make copies of your templates, or edit all of your templates. Make sure anywhere you have a fixed date that you're updating that, in both in text and in any workflow actions that you're using. So just kind of make sure to make all of those updates, but then you can kind of use this again and again, which is really fun. So just a couple tips to recap. Keep it simple. As I said, this is, we're not doing a proposal, we're not doing package selection, we're not doing, all of the payment schedules here. It was just a simple pay this fee up front. If you did want to incorporate package selection and payment schedules proposal in the scheduler, check out the link here for the scheduler proposal flow webinar. So it's a little bit more advanced. So that's an option available to you, but this one really does work a lot more smoothly. And as I said, you can keep reusing this for future events. And then we talked about making sure to clear out those leads who don't finish their booking and doing that appropriately. And also just be mindful if you are adding stuff to your workflow, to this follow-up workflow. The reason we're splitting it up is because we're using fixed dates. If I put an action in this other booking workflow with a fixed date and the client never paid, the action would still run and send out a thank you email to a client who didn't pay and didn't attend a session. So that's why we split this up. We do not want to apply that workflow with fixed dates to the project until we know that they're booked. So that is why we are splitting that up there. So just be mindful of it as you add some things in to keep those triggers appropriate.